Moving into a nursing home was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. At first, it seemed like the right thing to do. My kids were worried about me living alone. They thought I'd be safer and better cared for in a place where help was always available. I believed it too. But looking back now, I can't help but feel regret. There are 6 hard truths I learned that no one warned me about. I want to share them with you so you can make a wiser choice than I did. The first thing that hit me was the loss of independence. I had spent my whole life making my own choices, when to eat, when to sleep, and how to spend my day. That freedom was gone the moment I walked through those doors. Meals were served at set times whether I was hungry or not. Lights out happened early, and waking up too late meant missing breakfast altogether. Even simple things like choosing my clothes or deciding to take a walk required asking permission or waiting for someone to assist me. I never realized how much I valued those small freedoms until they were taken away. It felt like I had lost control of my own life. Then came the emotional toll. Loneliness crept in faster than I expected. People often think a nursing home is full of social opportunities. But the truth is that many residents keep to themselves. Some are too sick or tired to socialize. Others have memory issues or simply prefer their own company. I missed having real conversations, the kind where people know your stories and care about your thoughts. Staff members were kind, but they were always busy. They couldn't sit down and chat for long. I often felt invisible, like I was just another person in a room full of strangers. Money was another unexpected burden. Nursing homes aren't cheap, and the costs pile up quickly. I thought I had planned well, but my savings started disappearing faster than I anticipated. Each month felt like watching sand slip through my fingers. I had to give up little comforts because I worried about running out of money. Simple things like ordering my favorite snacks or subscribing to a magazine became expenses I had to think twice about. I realized too late that my financial security was vanishing before my eyes. The loss of privacy was something I never fully prepared for. In my own home, I could close my door and enjoy peace whenever I wanted. In a nursing home, there was always noise, people talking in the hallway, staff coming in and out without warning, and the constant hum of activity. I felt like I was never truly alone. Even at night, I'd hear doors opening and closing or residents calling for help. It was hard to find a moment of quiet where I could gather my thoughts. Privacy became a rare luxury, and I missed the comfort of my own space. One of the hardest truths I faced was the decline in my mental and physical strength. I thought being in a nursing home would keep me active and engaged, but instead, I felt myself slowing down. With everything being done for me, I no longer had to cook, clean, or manage my home. At first, that seemed like a relief. But over time, I realized I was losing touch with the habits that kept me sharp. I felt weaker, and my mind seemed less clear. The less I did, the harder it became to do anything at all. I began to wonder if I was aging faster simply because I wasn't challenging myself like I used to. Perhaps the most painful truth of all was the strain it put on my relationships. I thought moving into a nursing home would bring me closer to my family because they wouldn't have to worry about me as much. Instead, visits became less frequent. My kids seemed to believe I was taken care of, so they visited only when they had time. Friends stopped coming by because they found it uncomfortable. I went from being surrounded by loved ones to feeling forgotten. I kept telling myself they were busy, but deep down I knew things had changed. The walls of a nursing home seemed to separate me from the world I once knew. If I could go back in time, I would have tried harder to stay in my own home for as long as possible. I would have explored home care options, hired someone to help with chores, or leaned more on my family and friends for support. Moving into a nursing home felt like the safest choice, but it came at a price I never expected: my independence, my privacy, and my sense of purpose. I'm sharing this because I don't want you or your loved ones to make the same mistake without knowing the truth. If you're considering a nursing home, take your time. Weigh your options carefully. Sometimes the safest choice isn't always the best one. Now, let's clear some common questions. What small freedoms did you miss the most that you once took for granted? One of the first things I missed was deciding when to start my day. At home, I could wake up when my body felt ready. Sometimes I enjoyed lying in bed for a few extra minutes, just thinking or letting my mind wander. Other mornings, I'd jump up early if I felt energized or had something on my mind. That choice was mine, and I never thought much about it. But in the nursing home, mornings were no longer mine to control. Breakfast had a set time, and if you missed it, you went hungry until the next meal. I remember waking up one morning feeling tired, thinking I'd rest for a while longer. But when I finally got up, breakfast was over. The staff told me I should have set my alarm. That moment hit me hard. Something as simple as deciding when to rise had been taken from me. I also missed being able to make my own meals. Cooking had always been more than just preparing food. It was part of my routine and something I genuinely enjoyed. At home, I could decide what I was in the mood for: eggs and toast, maybe a bowl of oatmeal, or sometimes just a cup of coffee while I read the paper. I didn't realize how special that freedom was until it disappeared. In the nursing home, meals were chosen for me. There was no changing the menu or asking for something different. If you weren't in the mood for what was served, tough luck. I remember one day when they served liver, a food I never liked. I sat there, poking at my plate, feeling frustrated that I couldn't even decide what to eat anymore. I never realized how comforting it was to stand in front of my fridge and decide what I wanted. Another small but meaningful freedom I lost was choosing when and how to spend my time. At home, I could sit by the window and watch the world go by if I wanted. Sometimes I'd take a walk just because the air smelled nice, or I'd spend an afternoon in my garden trimming plants or pulling weeds. In the nursing home, everything ran on a schedule. Activities were planned in advance, and if you didn't feel like joining in, you risked spending the day sitting alone in your room. I remember one afternoon when I felt like reading. I wanted to get lost in my book, but instead, I was encouraged to join a group activity because it would be good for me. I knew they meant well, but I wasn't in the mood. Yet somehow declining felt wrong, like I was breaking the rules. That quiet afternoon with my book, the one I could have had at home, was no longer mine to enjoy. Even something as simple as stepping outside became complicated. At home, if I wanted some fresh air, I'd grab my keys and go for a stroll. Sometimes I'd walk down to the corner store just to buy a chocolate bar or chat with the cashier. In the nursing home, I had to ask for permission to go outside. Sometimes the staff was busy and I'd have to wait. Other times they said it wasn't safe, especially if the weather wasn't perfect. I remember one spring morning when the sky was clear and the breeze was warm. I longed to sit outside and feel the sun on my face. But I was told it wasn't possible because there weren't enough staff members available to supervise the outdoor area. I sat by my window instead, watching the trees sway in the wind, feeling like a prisoner in a place that was supposed to be my home. Privacy was another small freedom that I never realized meant so much. At home, if I needed space, I could close my door and be alone. I could sit quietly and think or write down my thoughts without anyone interrupting me. In a nursing home, that sense of personal space disappeared. Staff members came in and out without warning, sometimes to deliver medication, sometimes just to check in. I remember one evening when I was feeling down. I wanted to sit alone with my thoughts, but the door opened suddenly, and someone walked in to remind me about an upcoming event. They meant no harm, but I remember feeling irritated because I couldn't even have a moment to myself without someone interrupting. Even choosing what to wear became something I missed. At home, I'd pick my clothes based on how I felt that day. If I wanted to wear my old flannel shirt because it reminded me of my younger years, I could. If I felt like dressing up just to feel good, I could do that too. In the nursing home, there was constant pressure to wear comfortable clothes that were easy for staff to help with. My favorite button-up shirts were replaced with loose-fitting tops because they were simpler to manage. It sounds like such a small thing, but it chipped away at my sense of self. I felt like I was losing my identity one choice at a time. Perhaps the most painful freedom I lost was deciding how I connected with others. At home, if I wanted to invite a neighbor over for coffee or visit an old friend, I could do that. In the nursing home, visits depended on other people's schedules. Family visits happened when it suited them, and sometimes they'd cancel without notice. Even when they came, I felt like they were visiting the nursing home rather than visiting me. It felt less personal, like I was just another resident on a list of people they needed to see. All these small freedoms, waking up when I wanted, choosing my meals, spending my time how I pleased, stepping outside whenever I felt like it, enjoying quiet moments alone, wearing what I liked, and connecting with people on my own terms. They were things I never thought much about when I had them. But once they were gone, I realized they were the pieces that made me feel whole. Losing those freedoms wasn't just inconvenient. It made me feel like I had lost myself in the process. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone considering moving into a nursing home, it would be this: think long and hard before you make that decision, and make sure you've explored every possible alternative. I don't say this to scare you or to paint nursing homes as terrible places. Some are well run with caring staff and comfortable living conditions. But what I've learned through my own experience is that no matter how nice a place may seem at first, there's one thing that's nearly impossible to prepare for: the feeling of losing control over your own life. That's something I never fully understood until it happened to me, and I would give anything to go back and rethink my decision. When I first considered moving into a nursing home, I thought I was being practical. I was getting older, my strength wasn't what it used to be, and I knew I couldn't keep up with house maintenance the way I once could. I told myself I was just being responsible, making things easier for my children and ensuring I'd have help if my health declined. The place I chose seemed nice. The staff were polite during the tour, the rooms were clean, and the dining area even had tablecloths and flowers. It felt less like an institution and more like a cozy little community. I convinced myself it was the right move. What I didn't realize was how much my life would change once I was no longer in charge of my own day-to-day choices. The first thing that hit me was the loss of routine. Not in the sense that I had nothing to do, but that I no longer controlled how my time was spent. At home, I could wake up when I wanted. If I felt like having a late breakfast or skipping lunch because I wasn't hungry, I could. In the nursing home, everything ran on their schedule. Meals happened at set times, and if you weren't there, you missed out. I remember one morning waking up feeling tired. I had been up late the night before, just thinking about old memories and listening to music. When I finally got up, breakfast was over. I asked if I could have something simple, even just toast or a piece of fruit, but they said the kitchen was closed. That moment hit me hard. Something as basic as deciding when to eat was no longer my choice. The next thing I realized was how much I missed my own space. At home, I could sit quietly with my thoughts whenever I needed to. If I felt like shutting the world out for a while, I could close my door and be alone. In a nursing home, privacy was hard to come by. Staff came in and out of my room all day, checking on me, delivering medication, or reminding me of upcoming activities. They meant well, but it felt like I was constantly being monitored. I remember one evening I was feeling emotional. I just wanted to sit quietly with my memories and gather my thoughts. But before long, someone walked in to remind me about an event happening in the lounge. I know they were trying to help, but I felt like I couldn't even have a moment to myself without someone interrupting. Then there was the issue of relationships. At home, my friends could drop by whenever they wanted. Sometimes a neighbor would knock on the door just to say hello, or a family member would surprise me with a visit. In a nursing home, visitors had to follow certain hours, and those times didn't always match when people were free. Even worse, visits started to feel less personal. Instead of sitting in my living room sharing memories, we'd sit in the common area surrounded by other residents and their families. The warmth of those one-on-one moments started to fade. I remember feeling like I wasn't really me anymore. I was just another person living in a facility that visitors passed through before heading back to their real lives. But perhaps the hardest thing was the feeling of being forgotten. At home, I had a role. Even as I grew older, I felt like I was still part of something, someone who mattered. I could offer advice to my grandchildren, share stories with friends, or lend a hand in small ways. In a nursing home, I felt like my purpose had vanished. The staff were kind, but they didn't know me. They knew my name, my medication schedule, and which room I lived in, but they didn't know me. I wasn't someone's father, grandfather, or neighbor anymore. I was just another resident they had to care for. That emptiness was harder to face than I ever imagined. If I could go back in time, I would have tried harder to find other options. Maybe I could have hired someone to help me at home or asked my family to pitch in more. I would have considered moving in with one of my children, even if it meant swallowing my pride. I would have explored community programs that provide support for seniors living independently. There are more resources out there than people realize, and I wish I had looked deeper before deciding that a nursing home was my only choice. That's the advice I would give to anyone thinking about making the same decision I did. Don't rush. Don't assume that moving into a nursing home is the easiest or safest path. Talk to your family. Reach out to friends or neighbors. Ask for help if you need it. And I know that's not always easy, but it's worth it. Most importantly, fight for the small freedoms that make you feel like you. Whether it's choosing what to eat, how to spend your time, or simply deciding how you want to live your life. Those choices are what keep you feeling whole. Once they're gone, it's hard to get them back. I'm not saying nursing homes are all bad. For some people, they may truly be the best option. But if you still have a choice, if you still have the strength to explore other possibilities, I urge you to do so. Because once you hand over control of your life to someone else, no matter how well-meaning they may be, you risk losing more than just your independence. You risk losing the very things that make life feel like your own. And believe me, that's not something you can easily replace.